All right, Vish, it's yours.
Yes, thanks, Carol. Carol was the one who's doing all the technology stuff here. So she's getting us all ready here. I'm Vish. I know most of you know me as Vish. So forget the other name. There's only one Vish here. Mike Hoffar is here. He's our president, of course. And Mike, do you want to say anything first or get us started? You are muted, Mike.
No, I just wanted to say hi to everyone. For those of you that are going to be in California, I look forward to seeing you there, and glad you got this meeting pulled together for this evening, and look forward to the discussion.
Mike is also our EB liaison. Our main liaison is going to be Kevin. Kevin is not going to be here today. He has his personal issues, so he will not be here today. I also have a co-chair, Phil Simpkins. He won't be here either. There's a lot of sickness in the family here, in the committees and all that. I was expecting all the committee members, but even them, all of them will not be here. There are a few of you are here for committee members. So I want to welcome all of you. We have an hour and we will do what we can as fast as we can. I want to welcome you, but I want this also more conversational. First, I sent an agenda, which I believe Carol sent to all of you. It's a very short agenda, but we may have some discussions on the ADMs. So we'll spend most of our time talking about the ADMs. So introduction, that's it. Nothing more. Thank you, Carol, for everything you do. And thank you, Mike, for being here. He's also a liaison. The other EB liaison is Fun Fong. I don't think he will be here either. I became the co-chair only last year, and there was a gap. And then Phil is also the co-chair. We had a lot of backlog of, I'm just giving a brief history of what happened here. We have 13 members in the committee. Some of them are brand new. We have a backlog of 5 cases. We sold most of those. We were very busy for good and bad, but we are very reactive in the sense we had a lot of work that was pending and we tried to finish those. That's what we did from November till now. I think between Kevin and I and also Phil, we were trying to wrap up things. One good thing was we have a dashboard. That's where everything happens. We were a guinea pig for that, meaning we are using that dashboard for all our communications. It was nice sometimes, and Carol, I had told Carol a million times, there are a lot of other features I would like to see there, but still, the good news is everything is there in one place, even if the chair moves or all the information will still be saved, which is that history we really need from the previous cases and whatnot. I did say that there were 5 cases. I cannot talk anything about those cases, so we will not be doing that. But we did put a closure to several of them, which is good news. If any, we did a lot of work, okay? And I think I was pushing, I know I was pushing, and so did some others. Because of all that, I believe we are one of the committee. We were awarded the committee of the year of all the good work done by the committee. We can pat on our own backs for doing all that work. But it came with a lot of problems too, because we were trying very hard to do certain things, which didn't go very easy at times. And a new group, we didn't have that much of cohesion, but we are getting there. So we'll be getting an award as the committee of the year. So that's the best part. Well, I don't want to take up too much time saying all this, but what I would rather like to do at this stage will be go to the agenda item. That's we need to have we will have the US Open meetings in California. So before that, we have to have at least a straw poll on 2 issues. So going to the 3rd item on our agenda, which is ADM 2225, which has to do with when the delegates are going to be officially sent, the information sent out to the office. Guy Hoffman is here, right? Yeah, he's here. Guy is the one who wrote most of that, so I'm going to acknowledge him. Guy, if you want to say something about that's what we are going to discuss on, and maybe if you want to say a few words of your ADM, and then we can get a straw poll on that.
Okay. I put this ADM in because of actions being taken by this committee and bylaws. The bylaws amendment that was referred to us wanted to have like open delegate seats after February 1st. And I said, this is not going to work. But I figured, okay, what's the latest we can make this, since November 1st isn't something that most of our states seem to go along with. I had asked Jennifer if March 1st would work for her, things could get published in time. And she said that would be good. Whether it can be a little later than that, say April, that might be possible. May would probably be pushing it. We could ask Carol about that, but I think May would be pushing it. It wouldn't make it to the delegates' call.
That's correct, Guy. I think May would be pushing it too far.
Yeah, so maybe we'll make it April 1st, but I'll confirm that with Jennifer, or I could confirm it with you, Carol.
But by the way, interjecting, if anybody wants to talk, raise your hand. Carol will let you in to talk because she's doing all the, so in Zoom, raise your hand, basically, right? You all know that, sure. So the way it stands is April 1st now, Guy?
What's that?
The ADM says April 1st now? The date?
It is still listed, it's published obviously as March. I would happily make it April if I could.
Okay, so it's March.
It's-
Anybody else has a comment on that?
So you're basically saying, Guy, you would accept a friend, or you would either entertain or propose a friendly amendment just to change it to 1 April.
Yeah,
Okay.
Anybody else?
I mean, there's a part of me that says we put a date in there for a reason, you know, to drive people to get their delegates all situated. 'Cause I mean, whether we put 1 November or 1 April and then say, well, as soon as possible, it's going to mean everybody's going to look at the as soon as possible part of it and see
Well-
that date is not a hard date, which is just going to, you know, result in some issues from time to time with some of the states, and we'll just have to accept that and live with it, I guess.
but 1 November has been ignored by many of
Yeah,
the states
exactly.
for years. I
Right.
figured it needs updating.
Vish, Alex Lumelski has a comment.
You can let him talk, right? I said, or you want,
Yes.
I have to, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, she's got me. We debated this a little bit, I guess, at committee. Don't remember. I think it was a bylaws. I'm in support of the motion. I think a later date, as late as you can make it, would be helpful. Obviously, as said, November 1st doesn't work well. I know for us in Connecticut, it does not work well usually, mostly because whoever we get in November, I mean, if you look at our history, chances are they're not going to show up to the annual meeting. You know, they can't even start making plans in November. So the April date would be better than March. It gives us a chance to use the national nominees or their parents as potential delegates. We don't select ours until at least the middle of March or sometime during March. So I think this is a very helpful amendment by Guy. I guess my question was, I don't remember from the language of the amendment, was it that also the delegates will serve from April 1st to April 1st or March 1st to March 1st? Or is it just we have to let you know on April 1st?
It says 1 year. It says 1 year.
Right, but
1
the
year from
delegates-
April 1st.
Right, but delegates don't get replaced unless they resign and.
But that's just a state matter. That's not true anymore, Carol. That's
Oh,
just
really?
a state matter. The state can handle that. You know, if I go to Ananda Malapati as president in Virginia and say, hey, I'm not going to bet it go, I resign my position as a delegate, he can fill it. know?
Correct, but you still have to resign. The office enforces that strictly because there have
No,
been issues
not
in the
anymore.
past.
There's no reason to do that. That's the whole point.
Okay,
The office doesn't have to get involved with it at all. It's a state's matter.
So I'm sorry, clarification. So the states are permitted to replace their delegate by the, I guess, the officer who's in communication with US Chess at will?
I'll let Guy answer that.
I think that would be pretty close to correct.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we have the, if the delegate doesn't show up at the meeting, he's deemed to have resigned, so nothing has to happen there. But if the president or the authority in the state organization wishes, finds out who is actually going, then he'll just send those names in, even if it's a few days prior to the meeting. And that happens frequently. You could ask Carol about things like that.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
see
I
her now.
think
So if,
Jim Hodina and Larry Cohen wanted to go. Carol, I'm just saying that. Jim,
Yeah, thank you. So in Iowa,
next Lauren.
we have a couple procedural matters that we actually, as a membership, vote and elect our delegate. So it's not an appointment from the board or the president or anything like that. So every year, if there's a different person that's elected, we're gonna submit.
you
Larry
silenced him,
Cohen.
We're going to submit that information to US Chess. And what I was asked to do by the office staff there was to submit the meeting minutes that I applied the election and who the new delegate was, and to inform them. I did that. I got an incredibly nice email back saying, thank you, that's exactly the way we would like to see it. And so I was quite satisfied with that approach. The language that Guy put together also said, or as soon as feasible. So our annual meeting is in April. So immediately after our election, which was second or third week in April, I submitted our newly elected delegate. And I hope that that was still part of the language and to be kept in.
Yeah, because unless the US chess bylaws specify how a state has to assign its delegates and how delegates have to be replaced, unless it specifically states that, that's up to the states. And I would recommend, it kind of sounds like what Iowa did. You've got it in your bylaws, how we do it.
Mhm.
That way, if a member says, I don't know why I got replaced, you can say, well, here's what the bylaws say. And our bylaws and our state chapter say this is the process, and you didn't abide by the process, so you were replaced.
Larry Cohen.
Larry, you need to unmute.
Yeah. We can't hear
We're
you.
asking him. There you go. You can speak, Larry.
Okay, yeah, the problem was I needed to be unmuted. It's basic pretty much for most or all states that they like to have officers as delegates. Not always all the case, but even so, it's often the case that even if the officers aren't the delegates, they're the ones that are choosing the delegates. So then, of course, if you're doing with November, well, you have a lot of states where you may have new officers coming in and they don't come in till like January 1st. So there's no question we have to push this date further out. That's one thing. The other thing is we need to encourage more listing as far as alternative delegates, because the alternatives are supposed to come in when a regular delegate is unavailable, whether or not they resign. And most states, I think at this point, aren't doing alternative delegates anymore. They just, realize, well, hey, we can just have, president or whoever is head of the delegation at the delegates meeting, add somebody in, which has been done a lot of times. The only issue which we took care of many years ago was the delegate for a day thing, where somebody wasn't necessarily even from the state. That's been taken care of. You've got to, you're now, to be a delegate, you have to be a member of the state organization. And you have to either live in that state or adjacent to that state. So
Um,
those are,
correct, you are not required to be a member of the state organization. There's nothing in the bylaws to state that. Illinois may have something about that, but US chess bylaws do not state that. They are free to select anybody they want as their delegate,
provided they meet the residency requirement.
provided they're either in that state or neighboring state if they're doing this at the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anybody else want
Alan
to talk?
Cantor has his hand up.
Okay, Alan. You have to unmute first before you can talk. We can't hear you, Alan. Yes, good.
Sorry. Yeah, I just have one question. I thought a delegate can be added or replaced at the meeting.
Correct.
Okay, so is that amendment necessary? Is that ADM necessary? Just a question.
The ADM is mostly to change the date of when you should name your delegate. Yes, there's still as late as, whenever feasible.
Okay, any other comments? If not, hearing that, I think Judy had something. Did Judy had a question, Judy? I am not sure.
Hi, guys.
Did you had a
No, I was just wondering because Mike said that, well, it's a state matter, so the state can influence or state can decide on the delegates, right? So Jim has a good system in Iowa. They are voting on the delegates, right? What if it's an appointment, right? And then what are the rules if the bylaws doesn't actually guide that? Are we falling back to a standard set of rules? Can the state be held accountable to a set of rules, and how does it work? I'm just wondering.
I can answer that if. The way I believe the bylaws are now, it is up to the states, like Mike said, which means that as long as the state bylaws do not require an election, the state can do whatever it would like. I mean, the state bylaws can provide instructions as to how to select a delegate, but if they don't, an election is not necessary. The whole point is whether an election is necessary at the state level. I think that's what the question is. So if there's nothing in the bylaws, it's up to the officers to decide how they'd like to select their delegate, probably the president.
Okay, I think
Mike.
I am going to go for a straw poll soon because we gave everybody a chance to talk and we need to keep moving here also.
Mike Neatman has a
Mike Neatman is
question.
the last person to talk. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's up to the president, though, of the state to contact the US chess, right? So, I mean, it's really up, it has to funnel through the president of the state association to get the name or names of the delegates and or alternate delegates to US chess, so that, because they need to have that information and publish that information. So, I mean, it's really up to the president of each state, I think, then to make sure that they're conduit through them to the US chess.
Right, as the communication point person. But
Right.
if the bylaws of the state say you have to have an election and the president keeps appointing, that would be an issue.
That'll be a different issue, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So Vish,
Can-
do you want the poll?
Can we call the question now? Everybody, unless you see a hand right now, I'm going to call the question. Okay, calling the question. It's a straw poll. You don't, how does that work, Carol?
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Carol.
Yeah.
If you're a
exactly.
co-host, you may not be able to vote. So
Eh?
Oh, okay.
we
So,
can take your vote. Just, you
I
know,
vote for. I'll vote for him. And Mike's voting for. Vish, are you voting for?
Yes, but so we don't click on anything. Okay.
correct.
We can't enter the poll as host.
Okay.
All right. So everybody has voted, who wants to vote, and well, so with the 3 voice votes, we have 10-0.
10-0.
Okay.
In favor, okay. Okay, then we are going to close this now, and we are going to go to the next ADM, which is ADM 2226. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to be helped by other people who are in my committee also. I still have that. Okay, I'm closing my poll here. Okay, thank you. Sometime back, when last year actually, this ADM came to the US Open, and then it came from the EB actually, and then it was referred back to the committee. Since then, our president Mike Hoffart had a state Zoom meeting sometime in October or November of last year, where about almost all the states participated. We got a lot of information. Our committee took all that and managed to come up with this. We thought there's so many changes, so we entirely rewrote the whole thing. Okay, some of my committee members are here and they can help me out also. Mike Alexander Lubinsky is also there. He was instrumental in writing some of those things also. Anyway, so it's a long list. It's pretty much changing a lot of things. We are giving some responsibility to the states. Take a look at it. And I think this is the second time it's going back to the US Open for the delegates to vote on. I think we have got a lot of things covered here, but if something is not right, if it's minor, we can change it now or later. But if it's something, what I probably don't want is everything returned back to the committee. That way we won't have nothing for another year. So if there are issues,
This, what I would strongly recommend
yes,
is that y'all prepare a voice track of some kind of, like 5 or 6 sentences that summarizes for the delegates what are the changes.
okay, I can do that.
So that they understand what's changed, because otherwise you're kind of left in the meeting going, okay, I see that's the same. Okay, that's changed. Or you kind of left flipping back and forth in your delegates call and trying to figure it out. Whereas just hey, we change, this particular, yeah, a stipulation was in the DACI before, we brought it into the bylaws, or we've altered this one in the bylaws from saying X to saying Y.
Okay. I can prepare that. I can definitely prepare that. I will do that. I'll do that for the US Open for sure. The delegates meeting. Yes.
Is there going to be time for someone to actually go through it, major issue by major issue during the meeting?
Well, I think what's going to happen is it's going to probably come down to that, because there'll be delegates who stand up and say, I'm not voting for something I don't understand. This is too complicated for me to understand what the changes are. So let's walk through them one by one. And that's ostensibly what we used to do in the at the on-site workshop, is we'd walk through it piece by piece by piece by piece and talk about what's changed. So, you don't have, 45 people from the delegates that are attending this workshop tonight. So my point is that I think y'all need to have that in your hip pocket, so that we are, at least to a degree, the committee is ready to talk about, here's what's changed and here's what's not changed. Because otherwise, if it can't be understood on the floor, they're going to just say, hey, let's refer this now to bylaws and let bylaws look at it, or something like that.
Well, it's very interesting that you say that, Mike, because bylaws did have an interesting comment as part of their review of the same ADM. And I think it was actually started with Guy's comment, and Guy's on the call. I might actually ask Guy to talk about it a little bit. I had to change the ADM to offer an alternative, to make it more, to make it look more like our bylaws. Right now, it looks more like a statutory section or a rule section in court rules. So I made a few changes, and some of the changes that were made can then be added to a best practices manual. I think when we were reviewing it last, the main concern was just cleaning up the language, cleaning up for clarity. And I joined later when most of the section was already, I would say, decided on. So bylaws does have some issues with this that they need to resolve as well. So did I lose you? No, okay. So if Guy would like to talk a little bit on that as well. The concern was that the section doesn't really fit the the same parameters as the rest of the bylaws.
Both chairs of the bylaws were members of this committee. And sometime we finished some of this way back probably in January or something. And I think I actually honestly referred that to Guy and Richard Kopke. Take a look at it, and if they have any concerns, to get back with us. Honestly, we did not get anything back. I did the same honestly with the EB also to see, hey, if you have any concerns, probably they read it or maybe they didn't read it, whatever. But we didn't get any comments back from them. So again, if there's a specific issue, we can look into that. But without knowing what we are trying to amend here, I cannot answer that. Open for suggestions, but
Lawrence,
they had their time too. That's what I was trying to say.
Vish Lawrence has had his hand raised.
Yes, please. Larry?
Okay, I'm up.
Yes.
I think, yes, the idea of some sort of a video or whatever to explain things isn't a bad idea. What we also need, if we don't have it already, is basically a list of the old versus the new and the changes in bold to indicate those are the changes. I know I've seen this before with other documents at delegates meetings where you're dealing with a change of something. If you bold part of it, it sort of pulls it out and makes people understand, oh yeah, this is the change. You have the new versus the old. You will, of course, need some sort of explanation for, specific changes, how they affect things. That's why we also have, rationale sometimes listed for ADMs and regular motions as well. And we need to make certain that that sort of documentation is attached and with this ADM.
So if I could quickly address that, Vish and I tried to bold to mark. Unfortunately, if we do that with this ADM, the whole ADM is bold.
Yes, exactly.
So
That's the
instead,
problem.
what I did was, so instead of doing that, what I did was I put little markers to say this is new or this is a transfer of the old section. So if you look at the actual at the delegates call and you look at the ADM, there's three versions. There's the current version, and then there's our amendment with markings, and then there's our amendment without markings. And I can go over, as soon as I get there, I can go over the markings.
It's
and explain it here if folks would like. Let me just get there.
Alex, I have the delegates call open if you want to use
I
that.
think, if you want to put it up, but I think it'll be easier for me to have a second screen. I don't particularly like it with the Zoom call. Let me just quickly go there. Governance. Whoops. Same
I was there
mistake.
when I was referencing the bylaws, so let me go back to it. Yeah.
Page 10.
Okay, so actually I had it open anyway, so my bad. Let's see. 26.
Yeah.
So so the first change is the split up of the first I think it's the first section of the article, which talks about organizational units, but I'm sorry, this is the current text. Yep, under state chapters, it bundles everything into one paragraph, and it's not very clear what is to be done when and how everything is done. So the first thing, the first change is the division of this paragraph into one designation, which is how a state chapter is designated or created. And then second, the application process. And there are two types of applications, which again, the current section is not very clear on. The application is based on whether there is a state chapter already in existence or whether there isn't one, and there are different deadlines for that. And the application process itself is slightly described as presenting an application and credentials. The original just mentions credentials. I don't think it's very clear as to what that is. So there's minor changes to language to clarify it. So the first section becomes two sections. One is what is a state chapter, and two is how to become a state chapter. And then section C is, it's not new. It's from the old section, but it's now a separate section. And it simply says state chapters are not agents for U.S. chess. And then everything else in this section 1 is new. Where that's actually another change that I made.
Rewritten.
So section 2 is new. We've added specifications for governance, although we, for section 2, part 3, that was included, I believe, in the DACHI. I don't recall. But we added to make sure to say that chapters have to abide by all the laws that are applicable to them. We restated that they have to nominate their delegates and alternate delegates, and they have to provide U.S. chess with their governing documents. We added a deadline that has to happen within 30 days of any governing documents becoming effective. That way, a state chapter doesn't just blow it off and presents us at least with, there's no enforcement, so I guess at least there's a deadline to have them follow something. And then the chapter fee is restated from the original. We then added communication, that's new. Guidance and service is new, and provide specifications as to how a chapter should behave. I'll just mention that in the bylaws section, the section 2C for guidance and service, I abridged that to just item 1. I think items 2 and 3 might be too specific. And then section D, we borrowed some from the DACHI, and then we improved the language, and I think I cleaned it up again in the bylaws section, in the bylaws committee discussions. But I mean, everything that a state chapter has to do with nominations, the fact that they have to run a state championship. Part 3, organize or arrange as ability allows. I actually amended that in the bylaws to say that they have to consider arranging other tournaments annually. And I mean, it's up to them, but they have to at least consider it annually. So maybe that's an improvement on the language, and might get some additional tournaments going at the state level. Positions in again, I'm not sure whether the clearinghouse in D4 is clear. I don't remember whether I cleaned that up, but there's a clearinghouse requirement for state chapters to use clearinghouses. And then, of course, section E is from the original, and that just allows the board of delegates the responsibility from the DACHI. The state chapters have to follow whatever board of delegates decide to enact. So if there's anything new that the board of delegates want, the state chapters have to follow it. And then section 3 lists the rights of state chapters, which is, I think it's pretty much identical to the original. And then section 4, revocation, there's a clause on that in the original as well. We just separate the state chapters from the affiliates. So there's a revocation for state chapters, and then later there's going to be a revocation for affiliates. One of the important parts of the amendment is to make sure to separate state chapters from affiliates, because what state chapters do and the function of state chapters, it's very different from affiliates. And the current section kind of blends it all together, which makes it more confusing. It also does not allow US Chess to kind of handle each separately. So the one big accomplishment with this amendment, if nothing else, I mean, there are many, but is the separation of state chapters as one entity and affiliates as another entity. So then we go into affiliates. Again, formation, just to clarify how affiliates can become affiliates. And then they're not agents for US Chess. This is all, I believe, from the original. Affiliate duties and responsibilities also have not changed, although I believe we added that they should use a clearinghouse. On the rights and privileges, we added that they should use a clearinghouse if to publish their events. And then there's the revocation paragraph, which is from the original. I hope that kind of covers it. I'm sorry, I'm on vacation, so kind of handling 2 screens as I'm doing this.
Yeah,
So if anyone has any questions,
this is Mike. I really think we're going to have to sharpen this explanation to the delegates, because
right,
if we don't, they're going to do one of 2 things. They're going to say, this is too complicated. There's probably something in it I don't like. Let's kill it. Or they'll say, let's refer it, to bylaws, and then let bylaws take a detailed look at it and report on it next year. So I think it would end up, being one of those 2, because what I would almost recommend is here's what Article 1 used to look like on the left, and it'd be up on the screen. Here's what what Section 1 looks like now up on the screen. And then you can talk about what got changed and why, and then go to the next piece, and you go to the next piece. And it might take, it might take 30 minutes to do all of that. But if you want to make this substantive of a change to the bylaws, the delegates deserve a detailed explanation and then understanding, why things have been changed and how it commits the states to, to other things that they may or may not be doing right now, and what got moved out of the DACI and moved into the bylaws, what's left in the DACI, and so forth.
right. So, I mean, I agree with all of that. Obviously, this is not the greatest presentation. But I mean, I can use, side-by-side comparison, but, I hate to throw a wrench into Mike's works here, but I'm actually probably not going to be able to attend the annual meeting this year. So I think that perhaps we should let bylaws do what bylaws has to do, and, make the presentation the following year, unless someone wants to do the presentation this year.
Yeah, and it's perfectly,
I don't think I'm going to be able to do it.
It's perfectly fine, for the chair of the States and Affiliates Committee, or whoever's there from States and Affiliates Committee, to say, hey, we discussed this in our workshop, and we decided it was in the best interest of all involved that we let this stew for another year and let bylaws get a detailed look at it, and then we'll bring it back onto the floor, next year. There's nothing wrong with that coming out of a delegates workshop. I mean, out of a workshop.
Right.
So.
I think what this is trying to say is that we worked everything that we could out of it, and I think States is finished with it. So States doesn't, giving it back to States is not going to change anything in this ATM.
Right.
All right. So if bylaws would like to clean it up for purposes of bylaws, which we started doing, and we only started doing with the delegates call motions at bylaws. So then perhaps this is the wisest thing to do.
I'm sure we're going to discuss this at the bylaws workshop at the open. I would have no idea how to present things
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
Split screen. I mean, I'm just not techie.
I might be able to work with someone from the committee to create a side-by-side and a map of sorts to show what came over from the DACI, and then what's new, new language that, wasn't anywhere.
Well, I mean, the thing about DACI and the purpose, I think, why Bob Messenger and Mike Hoffbauer presented the AGM altogether, right, was that it's no longer an option to follow, the DACI, which is an option. Now it's more solid. It's in the bylaws.
Codified.
So yeah, it's codified. So I mean, a lot of the AGM is new stuff. It is new. We can say that it was in the DACI, but it's like, maybe some states follow it, maybe not. Now it's going to have to be followed. So a lot of it is new. A lot of it is new. Only, actually, to tell you the truth, only the first paragraph can be done by side-by-side comparison. Okay, the first, what is the current section? Section 1 of the subsection? Section A of the subsection? I don't remember. Yeah, section 1 of Article 8. Only that part can be done in a side-by-side comparison. The affiliate stuff is similar, and you can say almost the same, but all the items for state chapters is new. And someone would have to discuss why it's necessary, I'm sure. Since delegates are state chapter representatives, I'm not sure how they're going to react to having to do more stuff, or having to do more things, or being obligated to have more responsibilities. So all of that is going to have to be explained. Vish, you're the chair, and so is Phil. So you can decide. I'm just letting you know, I will not be able to be there.
Phil will not be going either. He cannot go because he has health concerns.
Okay.
Yeah, so he will not be attending.
Right, I didn't know that. I thought he already made plans.
No, Phil is not.
So Mike, Mike, let us know what you want. Do you want? I can try to.
It's not what I want. I'm just trying to recommend giving, being able to.
But
being able to.
Bob is not. Right, I understand. Bob is not on the call. I don't see him. And this motion was originally presented by you and 3 others, I believe. Major contributors were yourself, I believe, and Bob Messenger. I joined the states.
I just saw a message from Jim Hodina that he'll be there and he will have. Shake your head if you can hear him. Okay, what we could do is we could try, but there are so many changes, but I don't think, Mike, like in some other ADMs where you can say this is read out and say this is what we changed. That's going to be very, very hard.
It's not that difficult. It's just, you have to have a consistent method to present what's changed. And if it means you throw up, here's what the new language looks like, and you're highlighting what's been changed and what's old, and you're saying where it came from, because the only thing that's left out of that formula is why was it changed. And that's the part that the delegates are going to be most interested in understanding, was why is something changed.
The rationale, I think, is really important.
Yes.
To present, and then the detail level of the changes.
Because I think as a committee, as a working group tonight, you really have 3 options to vote for. 1 would be you're in favor of it. 2 is you're against it. 3 is in refer it to bylaws for further study. And that's what I think is your straw poll vote, is among those 3, unless I'm missing something. Maybe Mike Neatman might, or Hal Terry might have an idea on something that we're missing in terms of those 3 options.
Right. And if the group so decides, you can use the abstention vote as your refer to committee instead. Just
Okay, so what do we do now? We have the three choices that, okay, we can take the straw poll, but that's not a problem. But we can also work with Jim and Carol and see if we can come up with a list that Mike is suggesting. That's also a possibility. So what the first vote is what now? The voting for against. Okay.
And then the abstain might be the referral.
Abstain is a referral for the, okay.
I would vote to refer.
Yeah, this is Mike. I vote also to refer.
And this you have to vote by,
I'm actually abstaining the abstain, meaning I'm
Referral.
not voting.
Okay, so everybody voted? Who's planning to vote? Okay, I'm gonna end it.
Or 5, against 0, abstain.
So-
This abstain actually means they want to refer to the bylaws, right?
Well, you actually have 5, 4, and 4 saying refer.
Right,
So that's-
because Mike and Alex voted by voice,
Yeah.
and just you were true abstain.
Right.
So can you repeat that, Carol? 4,
So
5?
we have 5 for, none against, and 4 who are in favor of referring, and yourself who had abstained.
Okay, got it. So where do we go from here then? It's awfully close.
Because I mean, I think it's
well,
important that this thing, regardless of it getting referred or voted for in the delegates meeting, I still think that the delegates deserve to hear what was changed and why it was changed, you know, and sort of what's behind it. So,
Okay, I will work with Carol and Jim and Mike, even though Alex, who is not going there, to come up with a document the best we can. Then the delegates can decide, and we will report the 5-4 also to the delegates, and then we can decide what the delegates want to do.
This Jim
Right.
and then Mike Neatman have their hands raised.
Yeah, go ahead. Can you unmute
Jim is
them?
ready to go.
I had a
Jim,
question. This is my first year in the committee and I'm not quite sure on the mechanics of a lot of things. Do you ever set up a work group between two committees to
sure.
go through it and finalize a recommendation? Because this certainly looks right for something like that.
Yeah, and that would be nothing wrong with, you know, with the referral to bylaws, asking bylaws to work with states and affiliates as necessary to, you know, help clarify things and get it into the appropriate structure and language that's suitable for the bylaws.
Jim, don't forget, Guy Hoffman sitting here, and Richard Koke, and Alexander, they're all members, and Alam Pali is not here right now. They're all members of the other committee also. So we had a good representation from the bylaws in this committee right here, right now, and before. They were all
there's
there.
5 members. There are
Who's got
5
there?
members.
Alex, is this, how would bylaws approach a referral such as?
I'm not sure if bylaws guy is, but I haven't seen that. I also would have a question because bylaws is a delegates committee and states is an EB committee. So I think there's some different, although I mean the EB can refer anything to the bylaws committee regularly. But I don't know how it would work as a joint work group. I know that bylaws has to tackle the language. I mean, I'm looking at this thing again. You know, it's kind of like a lawyer's thing, maybe. I don't know, but I'm looking at it now, and some of the changes that I made are cosmetic in the bylaws discussion. But I mean, this could be better than what it is now. Just to let people know. I mean, just
So
in
I have
terms of how it's presented as a section. We discussed this a little bit at states when we tried to finalize it, that there's still going to have to be some cosmetic changes made to it. So, I mean, I think the best thing to do here would be, you know, you give it to bylaws, and, you know, bylaws does have to decide how they'd like to present it. And then, if they want to send it back to states, for another vote, you can do that. But I think the section could be better. For example, Section 1 state chapters. I mean, what I realized later was that Section 1 should have everything that has to do with state chapters in it. So there should only be 2 sections in Article 8. Instead, we have 8 sections because we tried to put separate substances as a separate section. So I mean, things like that, and also some of it might be a little too detailed to be in the bylaws. I think I agree with Guy on that. So I think this would be a little rushed, and it would be very difficult to do. I think as a presentation where I'm not going to be there. Vish is going to be entirely by himself doing this, or maybe with Jim. I'm not sure how much language. And Jim said that he wasn't part of the committee doing most of it. My feeling is it should be referred to bylaws first.
It seems like more needs to be written, like a preamble. I do.
Well, I added a just to let people know. I mean, I did add reasoning to it, a rationale, and it's a pretty long rationale. I think as far as rationales go, for motions, but someone has to discuss it, someone has to present it, someone has to sell it for the buy, and I mean just for delegates to understand it. So. It's not quite there as a finished product. So also, I mean, Bob, we have 5 people on this committee. We share 5 people between us and bylaws. Myself, Guy, Richard, Bob, and Alan Polly. We're all in both committees, but bylaws did not get a chance to really look at it.
Mike Neatman has had his hand up.
I think the vote was for 5041. I voted for. I think the others probably did too, because I think we understand it. But at the same point is probably the delegates, as Mike Hoffbauer has pointed out, the delegates are not going to understand it. So I think even though we voted in favor of approving it, 5041, the delegates will probably vote to refer it. So Vish, when you report the results, you need to be very clear. 5 people were for, 0 were against, 4 voted to refer to bylaws, and 1 abstained. That's exactly how you have to say it. So you have to give 4 numbers in that stretch there. Okay. Thank you.
Let me ask Guy, who is here now. Guy, what is your thoughts on this? Would you rather have this group decide right now that give it back to you guys? Is that what you want? Or do you want us to make a presentation on that day? Can you hear me, Guy?
I think he stepped away.
Oh, maybe he did.
But you still need to make the presentation, because this is the kind of thing it's the kind of thing that's complex enough that you want to plant all the seeds at the next delegates meeting, and those seeds can mature over the course of the next year while bylaws is looking at it, and then next year when it comes back into the meeting, it'll be, oh yeah, I remember this from last year. Yeah, oh yeah, we kind of talked about it in our state, and that seems like it's going to work out okay, or we were against this specific point and here's why. So it gives the states a chance to chew on it also.
Exactly what I'm doing with that elections ADM.
But some of that happened last year. Last year, some of these were already discussed, Mike, right? Not
So,
completely.
Hal Terry has his hand up.
I voted in favor, but after hearing what Alex just said, that even he now thinks that the language isn't in final form, I'm going to change my vote. I'd be in favor of referring to bylaws.
So,
Because even if we all understand it, if the language and organization isn't good enough for final form yet, then it needs another year.
4051 then, Vish.
I got it. I got it.
First, you could sue the management about facing
Okay.
flooding.
Hey, please be quiet. I'm on
Mute,
the call.
guy, mute.
Guy, at this stage, it looks like it's coming back to you. Okay, because somebody changed their vote, Hal Terry. So it's 4-5 in favor of sending it back to the bylaws. I don't know, when you stepped out, that's what we did. Do you have any
Surprise.
comments, Guy? Do you have any comments, Guy?
Guy, you're muted.
We can't hear you, Guy.
You can't hear it.
I'm asking him to unmute.
Okay,
Yeah.
now I
Sure.
can, okay. When Alex presented this and what we had seen before, the entire idea of transferring the entire DASIs to the bylaws, we felt that, or at least I and Richard felt that it tended to clutter up, it was gonna clutter up the bylaws. So you didn't want all the entire DASI in there. And Alex presented something that only had sections 1 and 2, didn't have the others. And I thought maybe that's what he's changing his ADM to, just sections 1 and 2, and the rest of it will remain in the DASIs. Alex, can you answer that?
It's
That
I
happened-
can, but I would have to show
That happened last
the
week, sir.
change.
That happened last week.
Yeah, that happened last week.
By
But
then-
it is
Go
our
ahead, go ahead,
idea.
Alex. Go ahead, Alex. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I did send a copy of that to Vish, so he was aware of the fact that bylaws still had some changes to make. But I did clean it up quite a bit, and I posted it with bylaws. One of the changes, again, as the guy pointed out, it goes from 8 sections to 2. It also condenses the language, gets rid of the additional sections. It eliminates some of the specifics, which can be moved to a best practices manual. And maybe that portion requires maybe a supplemental states review later on after bylaws is done to decide whether certain things can be moved instead of, as bylaws mandates, be moved as best practices for states to follow. So again, something else that they can review. But yes, I did make some changes to the documents in bylaws.
So just from a approach standpoint that, it's likely that this will get referred. Alex, do you have a sense of, I would think that there's a shared sense of the rationale for why this particular
Right.
amendment is a good idea. And so if there's anything beyond what's already in the ADM that the bylaws committee seems to be, honing in terms of the language, it might be helpful to share that with Vish so that there's a common understanding of the why we're doing this.
Right.
And then the specific elements of what's changing and how things are moving from the DASI to the bylaws, we can address that at a very high level because we expect it to get referred to committee. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot of time in the weeds if we don't yet have our full garden planted and growing.
Right. No, I agree with that. As long as, a states committee is an EB committee. So if the executive board is okay with us, passing it on to bylaws, waiting for the product to come back, which Mike is, is providing thumbs up to. I think that's the way it should go. I shared with Vish the draft that I prepared in bylaws after Guy's comment, and it did get positive comments, just a couple of comments. But it's not something very difficult, but I think it needs to be polished off and made into its best possible result. best foot forward.
Okay.
Well, I think the rationale then is the important part at this
So,
point.
I mean, Mike, what do you want to hear at the annual meeting? What kind of presentation? I mean, you can let us know, you can let Vish know what you'd like to see in regards to this ADM at the meeting. But I mean, even here, we're voting that it needs, more thought, more processing.
Well, it's
you know,
like, it's
at
like I
least in
said,
bylaw.
I still think you want to give some of the details of what's in this thing, because you have to, just like I said, you have to plant the seeds for next year. So that when the delegates hear it, because many of the delegates will be the same delegates as next year. And they'll be hearing it for the second time. It won't be brand new news to them. And it may also, that interlude of 1 year while bylaws cleans up the wording, give an opportunity to quite possibly create a separate little document that just explains in more detail to people, hey, here's what's changed and here's why, and so forth. But those are all things we can think about. So, the executive board is going to be completely comfortable with this going to bylaws, because changes that are of this magnitude often require 2 years to get into place, with the first year being, a lot of research and looking at the issue and then reporting on it. And then the second year being the real issue. I mean, the real time when the thing is, now it's got a chance of coming to the floor and people understanding it and having had a chance to digest it over the year. Because I think a lot of the states are going to want to go back and talk about it, and assess how it may or may not impact them in a way that they're comfortable with.
Right. So, I mean, for that, I guess the way I'm understanding what you're saying, just to be clear, I think we should prepare a report about the status of this ADM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So,
you can end your report by saying it's the opinion of the States and Affiliates Committee that we should recommend this to bylaws, to start doing to look at it from a language and a formatting perspective, so that it's properly integrated into the bylaws using, a format and wording that's consistent with the rest of the bylaws.
Okay, I just want to add something here. The things that Alex is talking about, bylaws discussed that only last week or the week before. Alex did share that with me, but nobody really knows anything what's going on there in the rest of the committee or anybody else. So I think the best thing to do is we should not bring that up right now. Whatever the bylaws wants to do, that's fine. And it's going to be referred back to the bylaws and they can do it. Otherwise, it'll be total confusion what state is proposing versus the bylaws proposal. Nobody has seen it. Even though Alex knows what he's talking about. None of the state committee members think about it. You told me about it last week.
Correct. Right? So what Mike is suggesting, from what I'm understanding, is instead of just passing on this motion this time around, some kind of report be presented at the annual meeting that this is still being worked on. And then the highlights of what is being worked on. I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
So a report of the highlights and a report that this is still being worked on. And we can mention that bylaws, that the ADM right now is in bylaws. It's possible that after bylaws is done, we at least would have to review and vote on it as the state's recommendation, right? Because the final language again will change. In fact, when I was preparing this for the delegates call, I had to make some grammatic changes. So
let me be clear about procedure. If it gets referred to bylaws, bylaws is now in the lead. And States and Affiliates doesn't have a quote vote on it anymore. Now, y'all may talk about it in next year's workshop, just like this, and vote against it because you don't like the changes bylaws made, but if it gets referred to the bylaws committee's got the lead for the product, and they would be asked to consult with States and Affiliates in case there's a part of it they don't understand, so that it can be explained better. And then, okay, now we understand what that's supposed to mean, and we'll fix the language so that it says what you want to say in a manner that's consistent with the bylaws.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I think it's not unreasonable to have.
I think we are going in circles now. I think we know what we are going to do. We are going to make a presentation on that day, and we are going to say that the straw poll basically said, give it to the bylaws. Most likely the delegates will vote on it in that fashion, and we'll take it from there, right? Because we're not going to finish it tonight, this discussion. It's going to go back to the bylaws and let them come back with a proposal for next year, right?
A question for Mike, if I may. From what you just said, bylaws has the lead. I mean, that's fine. But the question is, will the EB then still want the States Committee to review it? I understand bylaws has the lead. They're going to come out with some kind of thing.
Yeah, that should be part of the motion that the delegates pass to refer it to bylaws, for bylaws to chew on it. And then once bylaws has completed their part, to pass it back to states and affiliates for review or something. That can all be included in the motion that's passed on the floor to action the item.
Vish,
yes,
is that okay with you?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Again, the delegates has the last say, whatever we do. So we'll go from there. Anything else anybody wants to say other than ADM 2226? Just a few minutes. We are past 1 hour here.
This is Mike. I want to compliment the committee, because Kevin Pryor has been, involved a little bit more closely than I have with what all you all are doing, because he's been in all your meetings and so forth. And Kevin's reports have always been glowing about the discussions in the committee, and that y'all are really talking about matters in a substantive way, and that it's really positive for what we wanted states and affiliates to do compared to how it was several years back, when it was just getting started and trying to feel its way through and so forth. So I think, I think that, my hat's off, and the EB has been very pleased with what it's seen in terms of, the productivity of the committee and the discussions that are going on, and the vibrancy of those discussions. So that's, great work.
Thank you.
I'll pass it on to the others who are not here today. Sure. Anybody, Carol, do you want to say anything, Carol?
No, other than thank you, everybody, for your work on the committee this year, and for those who came to, hear what the committee's been up to. Appreciate everybody's interest.
I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And if nothing else, I'm calling the question. Motion to adjourn. I don't know. We don't have to officially vote on it. I'm just saying that. Right. Okay. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vish.